Okay, this is this is another, I won't say convention wrap up, but I don't know if I can't remember. I was so tired last night when I made the last video. I can't remember what I talked about. My voice is still gone. Um, I was consciously mindful of because if I bored you to death on this topic, I am planning on downsizing my collection. And I still am planning on downsizing my collection. So that was a main, just cleaning up while I'm doing this, that was a main thought process of mine for the last bunch of months slash couple years. It's becoming more of a from the subconscious to the conscious effort of downsizing. I took a bunch of what we would call large items that I will never use and really have never used, like boat hulls. Like I have just after acquisitions upon acquisitions for the last 40 years of garage sailing and flea marketing and Kijijis and marketplaces and even value villages and other thrift stores, I have accumulated a absolute ton of boat hulls, and it was like unbelievably crazy how many I had, and they were all in bins in here taking up space. Also, big base plates from either for granted, Belleville or Paradisia, whatever it's called. That 32 by 32 with the 12-inch half quarter curve cut out of it. Took a bunch of those. I happen to have a lot, and the train base plate that came in that express train that nobody liked, but I bought lots of because I got motors and track and train controllers. I got at least 6 or 7 of those sets on deep discount. I can't remember if it was Shop at Home or Sears when they had the outlet. Way back in the day when I got into trains, I bought at least 6 or 7 of those sets, and each came with 2, so I had dozens, at least just from those purchases, a dozen of those. And I will never ever use a dozen of those anywhere, personally. I haven't in years, and nor do I plan on doing any in the future. And if I need one, I'll order it. I think I kept 1 or 2. I also got rid of my old 70s boxes, the containers, not the classic, not the cardboard boxes for sets, but the plastic ones from Samsonite that had the hinge lid on it and stuff. I took a bunch of those because I happen to have lots. So I got rid of a lot of that stuff, all the big ticket items, the big taking up space items, the big cluttering up my garage items that I always have to move to get at something. So it was, and I'm gonna say, like, it was a long time in coming. You've heard me talk and drone on about it for all these years on the YouTubes, and I've talked about it with my friends that I have to start downsizing. It felt good. Honest to goodness, it felt good, and I had fun at the garage sale. I will say that the garage sale was fun. Sitting beside some other sellers, she was very sweet, and we had a nice chat. I really enjoyed it, and people were walking up, "Hey, Dave, and what do you got here?" and blah blah blah. And in the end, all the boat holes I brought were gone. All the boxes I got were gone. All the train bogies were gone. Like everything was gone that I brought. And I mean, I wasn't asking a lot, but because I went on Bricklink and I looked at the Bricklink average prices for all these parts that I was selling, and they're all around $1 or lower. And I just asked for $1. So, and if people wanted, 18, 22, and they were paying me $20, absolutely. Like I wasn't there to make money. I was there to get rid of stuff. Like, and I mentioned in my previous rants, that's what garage sales are for, not to make a profit, but to get rid of stuff. Also not to take a loss, but that's a whole other story. I'm not going to go into that. I talked about that before. So that was fun, and I feel good about it. And I was talking to a whole bunch of good friends that I made and knew of before about my idea for downsizing, and I did mention that, and I regaled them of this stupid story that you guys heard many times already. That I have totes in the garage just full of classic space sets that have not seen the light of day in decades, like seriously, and it's just it just hit me the other day when I was looking through one to find something, or through several of my totes to find something, that they've been out there just sitting in the winter and the summer and whatever, just sitting there. And they're not doing anything for me except sitting there. And the thought process is they're sitting there because I have an ego that look what I got. And yet I'm doing nothing with it. I'm not displaying them. I can't display them really, because again, what I just realized in this show is that the van was packed just with one space layout, and us and the luggage and whatever. And if I want to do other shows farther away, I have to have room in the van for stuff. And yes, I can get a trailer and blah, blah, blah. But also, I was at this show and it took longer than the 2 hours. We'll just say that, longer than 2 hours. But of course, it was an exceptional circumstance because this is a brick convention and it is the Toronto Brick Convention. So I wanted to make sure that Toronto is well represented in brick conventions from the public and other people saying, look at the level of quality of mocks that are displayed at Toronto. So I tried to bring my A game. So I took my time today, or not today, on Thursday, to set up the layout. So it was as best as possible. And I will say that extra effort, instead of just dropping it down and trying to get up set up as quick as possible, that extra effort is just taking your time, putting the pieces together properly, saved a lot of problems in the back end. Now, there were some issues with the layout that were, I will say, absolutely minor. Absolutely minor. The one story I quickly have is my friend Dave St. Cyr. I was just leaving to go to lunch. And I said, hey, hang out for lunch. And then, and I had planned it with other people that go to wherever, and Sandy and blah, 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 to go to wherever, to some eatery. And I'm walking out the door, basically, of the hotel. And I get a frantic text from Dave saying, your train's fallen off the layout and smashed on the floor. And I go, son of a pup. Son of a pup. So I go running back in, and Dave thankfully had basically the monorail mostly back together, which is fantastic. And, so I helped him put it on. But of course, no, I missed lunch. Got it running again. It is what it is. The derailments always happen, especially on monorail loops, especially when stuff happens to monorail loops that we won't talk about right now. So that's fine. That's great. But anyway, it smashed on the floor, put it back together, and got it back on the monorail loop. And there was no more derailments basically for the rest of the show, which again is an exceptional. I'm not going to say this derailment was purposeful, but there was a reason why it got derailed. I think I've done almost every single show I've ever done has had numerous derailments, not like thousands, but like at least 5, 6, 7 derailments throughout, especially if it's a long show. And so this one I can only think of really one derailment catastrophe like that. And so that the number of derailments was vastly decreased right now, which was great. So I wasn't like worried. I'm always worried about something derailing, but it didn't happen. So that was great. I think I mentioned yesterday that I didn't buy anything at this show for the first time ever in any convention I've ever been to. We did go to the Lego store. I did fill up the Pick-a-Brick cup. So this was the extent of my purchasing this weekend. And it was at the Sherway Gardens. We went there, and then we went to dinner at Red Lobster, which I haven't been to in 2 or 3 decades. But the one thing I wanted to talk about in this video, and let's get into it at 9 minutes into it, is this guy. And you don't recognize this guy. This guy. This is my control center. And I was so busy with the show that I didn't take time to, I want to say this nicely, and I don't want people to take the wrong idea, because I tried not to make this ego. I did not take the time to really appreciate how wonderful these boxes are. I really did. Everybody else was telling me how great all the boxes, the blue boxes and these boxes were. But I did not take the time because I just finished building this. You saw the videos. It was just a couple months ago when I finished building this. And this is the first trial by fire. Like, it's a huge convention, and this had to perform the way I wanted it to, and I'm gonna say it performed exceptionally well. It was great. It was awesome. The lighting box, which I'm not bringing down because it's just a bunch of wires coming out of it. Both boxes were fantastic. It was easier to set up. It was a whole bunch of stuff. It was an attraction for people to look at and to talk about. It's already got the wear marks on it, which is fantastic because I love that. This is the one I'm gonna have to figure out how to raise this thing up so you can see. I'll just go like this. There we go. Yeah, we can see that. There, let's tilt this down a little bit. So originally, you might remember the videos, I had 4 train controllers, 2 and 2. And the 4 train controllers are color coded, they were, and then the connectors are on the side and the back over there. My plan for the show wasn't really complete in my head. The layout, the 3 monorail loops and the 1 train loop was going to be controlled by train controllers. But of course, I started those programs, and you saw the programs. I think I made videos about that. Everything's a blur right now. The RCX was gonna do some controlling of the layout. So when I set it up on Thursday, I had 1 RCX. I replaced this train controller with an RCX, and then there was a train controller, and this was monorail train, and this controlled the other monorail loop. And then I turned it on, and that monorail loop was working perfectly fine. That's the little circle at the top, was working perfectly fine. So I added the shuttle mover. So I took this train controller out, and I added the shuttle mover to this, and that worked perfectly fine. Then I did the big loop that, you know, you saw the video of it on the living room floor the other day. Completely copperized the other loop that I just copperized a couple weeks ago. I added that to the RCX. So I had 3 monorail loops being controlled by this RCX. So each one of these outputs went to each loop, and each one of these inputs went to a light sensor. Now the little loop at the top and the shuttle loop, those light sensors were already built into the layout from previous thoughts that I had, and I never removed them. So that was easy because the light sensors were already there to tell the RCX where the train was. The third loop, the big monorail loop, I didn't have a light sensor yet built into the layout. So I had to build one impromptu at the show, and I had time to do it, so I did it. And then I added it, and it worked perfectly fine. The one deficiency for the big loop is that I believe that train is too heavy. The monorail is too heavy, 6 wide and basically brick built, solid, because it seemed to have variable speed, because this is timed to go to the first station, and timed to go to the second station, timed to go to the third station, and then cross the stream, the light sensor, and then start all over again. So sometimes it would be 10 inches behind the first stop that I programmed. Sometimes it'd be 20 inches on the other side, and the timing was exact because I timed it on my phone. The timing was consistent, so it was the speed of the monorail that changed from loop to loop. And I would have thought, just by intuitiveness, that as the train would move, the monorail would go around the loop all the time, that it would just gradually get slower because plastic dust or whatever, it just gradually gets slower. No, it was like every single time, it was too fast, too slow, right on, and it was completely random, which I thought was a little bit odd. But it's understandable considering the age and the weight and all that stuff. So the big loop was a little problematic, but it still stopped most of the time at the stations that I programmed into the RCX. So that was 3 monorails being controlled by 1 RCX, and you couldn't believe how many times people, kids, everybody was coming up to me saying, "Oh, your monorail stuck," because they know what monorail is, which is fantastic. I said, "Oh no, give it 10 seconds," and then it would start again. And oh, it stops at the stations. It was wonderful to see when they said that. Oh, it stops at the stations, and that was yet one more quote unquote value added to the layout, that the moving vehicles stop at stations. I think I mentioned a 6-year-old yesterday that was just so inquisitive. It was absolutely fantastic, and we talked for like minutes, 20 minutes, and he was just running all over the layout, asking me all these questions, and very astute and observational questions. It was wonderful. And then Friday I said, well, if I got the 3 monorail loops controlled by an RCX, let's see if I could. And I also wanted, sorry to back this up a bit, those of you who have been around for a very long time will remember that I have the big bay door, the repair bay door that goes, it goes up, and then the ship comes out. Now that ship coming out, that part didn't even make it to the show because I left it at home. It's like I get to the show and I realize, but it doesn't matter. But the door coming up, that's built into the tower. So I said, I want to see that work again, see if it's still working, just for the chance. So while I was at the show on Friday, I get the laptop out, I get NQC running, and I quickly write up a code to raise and lower the door. And I connect it to this RCX. And I said, oh, the door's going up and down, woo! And I put a little push button on the layout at the back that nobody can see, and then you just press it and the door goes up, you press it, the door goes down. Very, very simple program. And that was fun, and I was showing it off to people. This is value added stuff that the future state of the layout, when I get the RCX stuff working, is to have little stations around the layout where the audience can press a button and something happens. And so that's what I wanted, and that's sort of what I tested with this guy. You press the button, the door goes up. You press the button, the door goes down. Woohoo! But I said, while I have this RCX out anyway, already doing something, let's add line 2, power out 2, and sensor 2 to the train loop, which has never happened before. Not in this layout. It's happened in other layouts that I've made, but on this layout. So the RCX will control the train, the actual train, the bottom loop, shall we say. So 9-volt track. So again, I had to create a light sensor in order to detect a train as it's going around. So I happen to bring spare light sensors, and I don't know why I brought spare light sensors, but it wasn't for this, but I had them there. I think I was trying to show off to people that I'm making these light sensors, reviving, getting rid of the zombified wire. But so I had 2 light sensors, one for the main monorail loop and one for the train, and it was great. So I set it up, and then I programmed it, and then I timed it, and the train ran perfectly the entire time. Stopped in all the stations. The only issue, and this is I'm gonna have to rebuild it, is at the rocket platform, and this has been going on for at least a half a dozen shows in the past 5 or 7 years. The train seems to sporadically get stuck underneath the rocket platform. It seems that either the track is out or something, that it just doesn't seem to want to get around the curve. And sporadically, not all the time, sporadically. So I have to go over there and nudge it and keep it going. So I'm going to look at that before the next show. But the train ran on this, the door ran on this, main loop, shuttle loop, and the top loop all ran on that. So that was 5 things I had running, 5, count them, 5 things running in this layout in 2021 on RCXs that I bought in 1998. That has been, quote unquote, deprecated, shall we say, or archived, shall we say, by most of the community. and again, I love it. Honest to goodness, I absolutely loved it. Because I find the RCX, for me, because of my vintage, old school, I find my programming of the RCX and using the RCX a lot simpler than any other interface that they've ever come out with for computer control. Now, for power functions and all the other stuff, Bluetooth and all that stuff, fantastic stuff. Absolutely fantastic stuff. I haven't gotten into the Bluetooth stuff too much yet that third parties are doing and blah, blah, blah. But for me to just sit back, plug in the wires, and just walk away and let it run by itself, these guys are a winner. Like the NXT could not do. The NXT could not do what the RCX just did. The EV3 could not do what the RCX just did. Now, those things have huge pluses on other things that the RCX can't do straight up, because this is the first iteration, really the first iteration. We can talk about other programmable things that Lego came up with before this, but this was my first kick at the can of real true robot automation and stuff like that. And the ease of me just taking a wire, because you can see me fixing the Zombify wire and just soldering it to the track, or just putting a train controller on the output, is the easiest thing in the world. And again, Lego has gone past this type of technology, because this is 25 plus years old. The RCX is 1998. They're not going to revisit it. They are not going to revisit the RCX. They're not going to revisit the NXT. They're not. It's just it's old hardware. The kids with the Bluetooth and the cell phones and blah blah blah. Let the cell phones do the processing. Let the apps, let the tablets do the processing. Why are we putting all that processing into a brick when the Bluetooth will just run it from the and it's already, you don't have to build anything. I mean, so I understand where they're going, and it's better, cheaper, but faster and easier for the kids to understand and use. Because the RCX did have a lot of hands-on and quote-unquote building from scratch. But that's from us old school people, and that's what I love. Anyway, so the RCXs performed fantastically well. The one deficiency of the box, especially with the RCXs, is I built the box to house 4 train controllers, 1, 2, 3, 4, all color-coded. And on the side, there are 4 outputs, 1, 2, 3, 4, corresponding to the RCXs, right? So, RCXs, each one sensor and output, that's 2 wires, 2, 4, 6, 8, 10. I had to have 10 wires coming to these 2 RCXs. Yeah, I didn't account for 10. And so, but this box wasn't quote unquote built for that, the original purpose. However, it's going to be. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to revamp the box, and I don't think I'm going to be doing too much physical changes to it. But what I'm probably going to do is I'm going to cut a little tiny U here so the wires can come in, because I basically had the wires just coming over the top and in the side, so I couldn't close this thing very well. And I'm going to remove the train controllers, and it's going to have them as an afterthought. I'm going to leave them in the bin, because they seem to be falling off, and I didn't like that part. But so I'm going to take those right off and just use this thing as a place for parts or something down here. But I'm gonna just run the layout with RCXs and just walk away. And because I can use the remote, and I can probably get the rotation sensor like they used for DCC. But I just like the idea of that these things could just run the entire layout on their own. I can just walk away. I don't have to, worry about train controllers and all that stuff. And the other thing that was fantastic, and Abner and I were talking about it, is the off switch, the kill switch. Like, boom, the whole thing's off. It was a lot of fun. Now, some people and I were talking that, and I mentioned this when I first developed this box, it would have been nice, absolutely would have been nice, to turn off the lights and stuff in sequence so you could see the whole thing powering down instead of just one off and that's it. That's just an overhead that I don't want. I could have put 10 switches on here, 1 for each power supply. I'm going, do I really want to do that? No. That's, first of all, money. Second of all, the box would have been 10 times bigger. Like, well, not 10 times bigger, but it would have been a lot bigger than it is now to have all the switches, one per lighting unit. And I said, I mean, a future state, if I was using the USB, like Rob Hendricks is releasing now in Life Lights and stuff like that. And then having, like, some people have just like, houses at Christmas time that, turn on and off lights to the music. Like, that's a fantastic want to have, but there's no way I'm doing it. Not for this layout, and not for the number of times I'm going to do a lights out for this layout, right? That's a lot. That's an exceptionally amount of electronic stuff that I'm not comfortable with in the first place. But secondly, it's just, for the amount of times that it's going to be shown, it seems to be like, wow, that's a lot of effort for the payback. What I noticed this show was just having the lights on, lights off. I mean that was good enough. Now maybe someday I will get the RCXs to run the lights, because if I get a whole bunch of 9-volt connectors from Rob, I can just have the RCX turn on and off the lights, right? Because I have 2 that run the entire layout. I'm going to be copperizing the top loop, that one that goes to the train station, goes around the top of the tower. That's my next actual step that I'm going to be working on, not this week because I'm supposed to be in Edmonton right now. That didn't happen. But I'm going to be doing that, copperizing that. So all the loops will be copperized and powered externally. And so all the trains will be, I will say this, the top loop was running on batteries. I only went through a battery and a half. I already had a battery in the thing, and I put another new battery in on like Friday, and it ran for the rest of the show. I was pretty dead at the end, but it ran, so I didn't have to buy a lot of batteries. But these guys right here, and the train controllers if I used them, the other loops, they go through usually 2 or 3. The big one goes through 4 batteries a day. And it was a 4-day show. That's a lot of batteries. So I'm saving the environment, but I'm also saving my back, and I'm saving my wallet. I'm saving everything else by powering the whole thing with RCXs. So this was utterly fantastic. I was so happy with this thing. People were loved it, and I'm very glad they did. I loved it. I did not expect how well it was. And then, as I say, when I went for lunch, I just closed it up. I mean, the wires are sticking out here, but I just closed it up. The kids couldn't touch it. And it was, and these things stayed where they were supposed to stay. I don't know why they fell off, probably on the way home. I hit a bump or something. But they stayed exactly where they're supposed to be. But I'm thinking now that I'm looking at it, going forward, I'll just take these things out. I won't bother with these guys at all. They will be in a bin just in case I need to, the RCXs don't work for a show, and I can just put these back in. So I'm not gonna like change a lot in this box, but I'm just gonna make a way for the wires that come into here to the RCXs, because right now it's that little hole, and that's too hard for me to get to underneath things. So I'm probably going through it across the top or through here. Just so I'm not like really like, I can put like these 2x8 plates, these electric plates, across the bottom, across the back, and color code all of them. I mean, I could absolutely, I got the room down there, so I might look at that too. But then I'm taking apart the entire box, right? And I don't know. I'll see. I'll make a determination at some point. The one thing that I really appreciated as at the show, programming RCXs on the fly, was taking me right back to RTL competitions. And you can see that guy way over there that I got for winning one of the last RTL robot competitions. Because that was, and my really good and dear friend that I've known for a very, very long time, Derek, was there. And he was with me when I was doing the programming and testing and stuff like that. And I said, this is just like sitting in the basement of Lillian H. Smith Library in downtown Toronto, doing Project X or all those other wonderful, beautiful memories I have of the robot competitions from RTL Toronto. And I'm using the same bricks that I was using then, and it was so nostalgic. It was so wonderful. But in the end, this is going forward. I'm using old vintage stuff to go forward. So I thought you guys appreciate that. I did. I hope everybody out there is doing well. I will keep you updated on the status of the updates for these things. I'm going to be working on it for a bit in my spare time. And I will talk to you guys soon.